As LTA explained when it announced the move to inject up to about 20,000 COEs, travel patterns have evolved after COVID-19 pandemic, and total vehicle mileage decreased by around 6% from 2019 to 2023. We have also observed lower traffic demand in the CBD, and ERP gantries in the city cordon remain unactivated. The ERP gantries at arterial roads, including the one in my constituency at Toa Payoh Lorong 5, have also been switched off since the pandemic. An increase in the vehicle population does not automatically lead to an increase in the total vehicular usage, as there are car owners who may choose to take public transport to work, as well as those who use their cars mostly on weekends or during off-peak hours. This is why it is useful to have both ownership controls and usage-based pricing, so that we can enable some families to own cars while keeping congestion in check, especially during peak periods. With ERP 2.0, LTA will have more tools and better capabilities to manage traffic congestion. ERP 2.0 will provide comprehensive, aggregated traffic information. It will also enable LTA to more quickly introduce new virtual gantries where necessary, based on the latest traffic patterns. This allows for more flexible and responsive congestion management. Given these considerations, LTA assess that it will be able to inject up to about 20,000 additional COEs across the vehicle categories from February 2025 over the next few years, without the worries of causing traffic gridlock. 20,000 additional COEs is about 2% of our total vehicle population. We had earlier said that the COE quota for categories A, B, and C will continue to increase every quarter before reaching the projected peak supply from 2026. The additional COEs will give us more flexibility to meet this commitment and further increase the COE supply in the next few quarters before we reach the peak supply from 2026. LTA will continue to closely monitor traffic conditions and, where necessary, adjust ERP charges to keep traffic congestion in check. So I want to be clear that this injection of up to 20,000 COEs is not linked to the implementation of distance-based charging. We have not made a decision on whether to implement distance-based charging, though ERP 2.0 gives us the option to do so. We will need to study this further, including with the data from ERP 2.0, as there are trade-offs we need to think through carefully. If we were to proceed with distance-based charging in the future, this will give LTA an additional tool to manage congestion, and there is scope to consider a further injection of additional COEs in tandem with the implementation of distance-based charging. The decrease in the proportion of bids won by car leasing companies also illustrates why the suggestion of having a separate COE category for PHCs and moving existing quota from Cat A and B into this separate category is not a straightforward exercise. Demand for COE from car leasing companies can vary quite a bit from quarter to quarter and from year to year. It is difficult to ascertain upfront the quota required to meet the needs of point-to-point drivers and commuters. As I explained in this House previously, if we move too much of the existing quota from Cat A and B to this new category for PHCs, it will reduce the supply in Cat A and B vis-à-vis the demand from non-PHC buyers, and could lead to an increase in COE prices in these categories. On the other hand, if we underestimated the quota to be moved to the separate category for PHCs, it will lead to insufficient PHC supply, which will in turn cause an increase in PHC prices and reduce accessibility for point-to-point commuters. There are difficult trade-offs, and it is not a straightforward exercise. So we are still carefully assessing this option. Members, including Mr. Ang Wei Neng, Associate Professor Jamus Lim, and Mr. Leong Man Wai, had previously asked if we could determine the COE category using the vehicle's open market value. We understand the rationale of this suggestion, and we will continue to review our criteria as technology and market trends evolve.
So 2 supplementary questions from me. First, I'll note that the recent announcement of the 20,000 additional COEs appear to be somewhat more aggressive than the hitherto more tentative cut and fill approach. I wonder if this move represents a more firm commitment by MOT to equalize over time the annual COE supply, especially with regard to reducing COE prices by the number of COEs available at decade end to eliminate the feast and famine volatility of COE prices. My second SQ requires just a little bit of context, so if you provide me a little indulgence on preamble, the introduction of ERP 2.0 will presumably reduce the intensity of car usage. Estimates published by the MOT suggest something in the order of 6%. So this will certainly open the scope for increasing the total vehicle quotas without necessarily increasing congestion, as Minister Chi has mentioned, which in turn would potentially allow for a greater number of COEs with less impact on prices. Alternatively, this could mean lower COE prices if we choose not to increase the quota. Hence, I think it's very valuable for this House to know what MOT's position is on the total number, or at least if the direction, an increase or decrease in the carrying capacity of cars, if a specific number isn't forthcoming.
Mr. Speaker, could I seek your permission to maybe request Associate Professor Lim to clarify the last part of his second question? You mentioned about carrying capacity. Maybe I could just hear from Professor Lim what he meant. Thank you.
So very quickly, my understanding is that the total number of vehicles currently in the vehicle quota system is something in the order of 1 million in Singapore. So the question, in a sense, is that with ERP 2.0, if the intensity of usage falls, whether we could allow for the possibility of an increase in that total number, or if we don't, then naturally that reduced usage would also imply a reduction in COE prices.
Mr. Speaker, I thank Associate Professor Lim for his clarification. Let me address his first SQ. The intent that we explained when we did the cut and fill last year was indeed to try and reduce the peak to trough ratio. If we could add to this direction by having this additional injection of about 20,000 COEs over the next few years, I think it will certainly help to make a further step towards reducing this peak to trough ratio. We are not doing this because of the only because of the 6%. I think the 6% reduction in the vehicular usage is one factor. That one, I wouldn't link it to ERP 2.0 per se. I think it's more driven by the changes in the travel patterns after COVID-19. Because we are already seeing that even though we are still in the initial stages of installing ERP 2.0, we now have 150, 160,000 cars, which is less than 20%. The total vehicle, 150 to 160,000 vehicles, which is less than 20% of the total vehicle population. So the drop in the vehicular usage is more likely linked to the changes in the usage patterns after pandemic. But I agree with Associate Professor Lim that if ERP 2.0, when we collect the data, shows that we are better able and more confident to manage traffic congestion and avoid gridlocks, there is scope to look at whether we can further increase the COE supply. If we look at distance-based charging as an additional usage-based pricing tool, that will give us further leeway to do that. But the objectives are similar. We are looking at different usage-based pricing tools to avoid congestion, and if we are confident in achieving that outcome, then increasing the car population by relaxing ownership controls, that wouldn't be a worry.
Thank you, Speaker. Just one question for Minister. Thanks for the handout. And I was just looking at the table 1 where the quota premium has come down by 4 to 21% compared to a year ago. At the same time, if you look at table 2, the Cat A and Cat B COE bids won by car leasing companies have also come down from about 24 to 26% in 2022 and 2023 to about 10% in 2024 as of October. Wouldn't this actually suggest that the car leasing companies do have actually an influence on the quota premium? And if I were to look back at 2012 when the LTA actually made the decision to remove taxi companies from the COE bidding process, they have also stated that the taxi operators' influence on COE prices is actually observed from them actually taking up a larger proportion, up to 25% of Cat A COE back then. So just wondering if Minister can actually elucidate on that. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I think, first of all, the table 2 for the PHCs, car leasing companies, in terms of percentage of bids won by the car leasing companies, if we look at 2022 versus 2024, that percentage has come down. But the COE price in 2024 compared to 2022 has actually gone higher up. So this is one indication that the main driver for the increase in the COE price is unlikely to be due to the PHC car leasing companies. Now, having said that, I am certainly not saying that they don't contribute to the overall demand. They do. That is a fact. They do. But the point I'm making is, what are the key drivers that are contributing to the increase in demand? And what I've also explained in my main reply is that if we look at having a separate category, we are not ruling out that possibility. We are studying it. However, I hope Mr. Chua agrees with me on this, that by having a separate category, it doesn't mean that you have suddenly got a windfall of COE supply dropping from the sky. It means you have to transfer existing quota from Cat A and B to this new category. So that process of deciding how much to transfer is not so straightforward. Now, we did it for taxis, but there's a difference between taxis and PHCs. PHCs are, some of them, or in fact quite a number of them, are used also as private vehicles by the owners. And they come in part-time during peak hours, for example, but during other parts of the day, they may use it as a private vehicle. So it's not so clear-cut that these are just P2P or point-to-point vehicles or private vehicles. It's a bit of a hybrid. They use it for dual purpose. And because of that, it is not so easy to ascertain what is this total number that would then fit into this separate category if we decide to have a separate category. So that is one of the challenges that we face, is in deciding what would be the amount that you need to transfer in terms of the supply to this new separate category. And so it's something that I think we need to take a look carefully. And if there are other ways to address the concerns with COE supply, we should also be open to looking at those other options too.